The version of you nobody would dare disrespect already exists. You didn't lose him, you caged him. And the wild part is, most men never unlock that version of themselves because they were taught to confuse being harmless with being good. Nietzsche saw straight through that lie. He understood something people are usually too soft to admit. A man who can't face pain, control his urges, stand alone, choose his values, defend his boundaries, and stop reacting to every little insult isn't automatically a good man. He's just a man with no power. And listen closely, because this is where people love to get dramatic. Becoming dangerous doesn't mean becoming evil. It doesn't mean becoming cruel. It doesn't mean hurting people, manipulating people, or walking around like some angry little tyrant trying to scare the room. That's not dangerous. That's unstable. That's a grown man acting like a Bluetooth speaker with low battery, just making noise because he's about to die inside. A truly dangerous man has power, but he isn't owned by it. He has teeth, but he doesn't bite everything that moves. He could destroy his old life, his old habits, his old fears, and his old identity, but he chooses direction instead of chaos. And by the end of this video, I'm gonna show you the final rule that separates a man who's only intimidating from a man who's actually untouchable. Because Nietzsche can make you powerful, but if you stop with Nietzsche, that same power can turn you into a monster. Most men aren't weak because life made them weak. They're weak because they got rewarded for staying small. They were taught, be nice, don't make people uncomfortable, don't think too highly of yourself, don't want too much, don't challenge people, don't stand out, don't become intense, don't become disciplined, don't become hard to control. And after hearing that for years, a man starts calling his fear kindness. He calls his passivity peace. He calls his lack of ambition humility. He calls his inability to say no being a good person. But deep down, he knows. He knows he's not peaceful. He's scared of conflict. He knows he's not humble. He's scared to claim power. He knows he's not kind. He's addicted to approval. That's the trap Nietzsche was attacking. He wasn't telling men to become evil. He was telling men to stop worshiping weakness, because weakness has a way of dressing itself up as morality. A man fails, and instead of getting stronger, he judges men who win. A man gets rejected, and instead of becoming better, he calls confidence arrogance. A man wastes his life, and instead of facing himself, he says success is shallow. A man is too scared to build power, so he convinces himself power is bad. That's not wisdom. That's resentment wearing a mask. Nietzsche called this slave morality. It's what happens when powerless people build a belief system that makes their powerlessness look noble. They can't dominate, so they call dominance evil. They can't lead, so they call leadership selfish. They can't build discipline, so they call discipline toxic. They can't become dangerous, so they call dangerous men bad. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. If you're only good because you're too weak to be anything else, your goodness hasn't been tested. A harmless man isn't automatically moral. He's just harmless. Rule 1. Become capable of harm, then choose restraint. This is where most people get Nietzsche wrong. They hear become dangerous and think it means become aggressive, cold, loud, cruel, or manipulative. But that's not strength. That's a man trying to prove he has power, because deep down he still feels powerless. Real danger is quiet. Real danger is options. It's the man who can walk away, who can say no without shaking, who can defend himself, who can endure pressure, who can lose approval and still stand, who can feel anger and not become anger. Think about the man who avoids every hard conversation because he doesn't want to upset anybody. He tells himself he's being mature, but the truth is, he's terrified of tension. Now compare him to the man who could confront the situation, expose the lie, raise his voice, make the room uncomfortable, but chooses the cleanest move instead. That's restraint, and restraint only matters when you actually have power to restrain. If a man has no teeth, him not biting isn't virtue, it's limitation. So stop asking, how do I become nicer? Start asking, where am I powerless? Is it physical weakness, emotional reactivity, financial dependence, comfort addiction, fear of saying no, folding the moment somebody raises their voice? That's where the work starts. Pick one area where you're harmless and build teeth there, not so you can attack people, so you can finally stop living like prey. Rule 2, make friends with pain. Nietzsche's whole idea of self-overcoming isn't cute. It's not a quote on a wall. It's not waking up one morning and magically becoming disciplined because you watched one dark edit with thunder in the background. Self-overcoming means there's a weaker version of you living inside your life right now, and that version doesn't leave politely. You've got to outgrow him. You've got to starve him. You've got to stop negotiating with him. And yes, that hurts. Most men run from pain because they think pain means something's wrong. But pain isn't always a warning. Sometimes pain is the forge. The gym burns because your body is adapting. Silence hurts because your nervous system is detoxing from validation. Discipline feels heavy because your old identity is fighting to survive. Loneliness feels sharp because you're no longer numbing yourself with people who keep you average. Nietzsche gave us Amor, Fati. Love your fate, not tolerate it, not complain about it, not sit around asking why life is unfair. Love it. And no, that doesn't mean you pretend pain feels good. It means you use everything. The betrayal, the rejection, the lost years, the humiliation, the insecurity, the night you looked in the mirror and realized nobody was coming to save you. Use it. A weak man turns pain into excuses. A dangerous man turns pain into evidence. Evidence that he can survive more than he thought. Evidence that his limits were lies. Evidence that the life he wants will require a version of him comfort can't build. So when pain shows up, don't immediately ask, how do I escape this? Ask, what's this trying to forge in me? Because if you keep running from discomfort, you stay easy to control. Comfortable men are predictable. Predictable men are manageable. Manageable men are never dangerous. Rule 3, take your values back from the crowd. Most men don't have values. They have downloaded opinions. They dress how the crowd rewards them. They talk how the crowd approves. They chase what the crowd claps for. They hide what the crowd mocks. They call themselves free, but one negative comment can ruin their whole day. And be honest, that's not freedom. That's just living with invisible strings attached to strangers. Nietzsche hated herd thinking because the herd doesn't want you great. The herd wants you understandable, safe, familiar. Easy to place, easy to judge, easy to control. And if you start becoming different, the herd won't always attack you directly. Sometimes it'll laugh, sometimes it'll question you, sometimes it'll call you weird, sometimes it'll act concerned, sometimes it'll say, you're changing, like change is a crime. But of course you're changing. That's the point. If your values came from people who are still stuck, your life will stay stuck too. You need a code. Not a cute little list of affirmations you forget by lunch. A code, a personal law, a set of standards you don't break just because your mood changes or the room gets uncomfortable. What do you refuse to become? What do you refuse to tolerate? What type of man are you building? What habits are beneath you? What distractions are stealing your life? Who gets access to you and who doesn't? The crowd wants you flexible because flexible men are easier to bend. But a man with a code becomes harder to move. He doesn't need every room to understand him. He doesn't need every person to agree. He doesn't need applause before he acts. That's dangerous because once a man stops asking the crowd for permission, he becomes hard to predict. And people fear what they can't predict. Rule 4, get comfortable being misunderstood. There's a cost to becoming rare, and that cost is being misunderstood. When you stop joking all the time, people say you changed. When you stop explaining every move, people say you're acting different. When you stop being available, people say you think you're better. When you start training, saving, building, reading, thinking, working, and moving with purpose, people who knew the old you will try to pull that old version back. Not always because they hate you. Sometimes it's because your growth exposes their stillness. If you become disciplined around undisciplined people, your discipline becomes a mirror. If you become calm around reactive people, your calm becomes an accusation. If you become focused around distracted people, your focus becomes uncomfortable. So they misunderstand you because misunderstanding you is easier than confronting themselves. Nietzsche understood solitude, not loneliness. Solitude. Loneliness is when you feel abandoned by others. Solitude is when you stop abandoning yourself. Every man who becomes dangerous goes through a season where he no longer fits where he used to belong, but he hasn't yet arrived where he's going. That middle place is where most men fold. They go back to old friends, old habits, old addictions, old distractions, and old versions of themselves, because being misunderstood feels too expensive. But listen carefully. If you need to be understood by everybody, you'll be controlled by anybody. The stronger your identity becomes, the less you can afford to explain it to people committed to misunderstanding it. So stop over-explaining your growth. Stop announcing every change. Stop defending every boundary. Stop trying to make average people comfortable with your evolution. Let your life become the explanation. Rule 5. Turn envy into a map. Envy is ugly, but it's honest. Most men lie about what they envy. They say, I don't care about money, but they resent men with options. They say, looks don't matter, but they hate the man who gets treated better because he's fit, calm, sharp, and put together. They say, confidence is arrogance, but they secretly wish they could walk into a room without shrinking. Nietzsche understood resentment, that deep bitterness that grows when a man feels powerless. But instead of becoming stronger, he attacks what he wishes he had. That's why the weak man calls the disciplined man obsessed. That's why the broke man calls ambition shallow. That's why the invisible man calls confidence fake. That's why the passive man calls boundaries cruel. He doesn't hate the thing, he hates the reminder. But a dangerous man uses envy differently. He doesn't let envy rot into bitterness. He turns it into coordinates. If you envy a man's body, that's not a reason to hate him. That's a map. Train. If you envy a man's confidence, that's a map. Build competence. If you envy a man's money, that's a map. Learn value. If you envy a man's discipline, that's a map. Fix your habits. If you envy a man's peace, that's a map. Stop living in chaos. The weak man sees another man winning and says, he thinks he's better than me. The dangerous man says, what's his life showing me that mine is missing? That question changes everything, because the moment you stop judging what you secretly want, you can start building it. And this is where psychological looks-maxing begins long before the face, the clothes, or the body. It starts when you stop lying to yourself. A man who's honest about what he wants becomes powerful. A man who pretends he doesn't want anything becomes numb. And numb men don't become dangerous. They become spectators. Rule 6. Stop reacting and multiply your power. Every man has buttons, insults, silence, rejection, disrespect, being ignored, being underestimated, being laughed at, being told no, being compared to another man. And most people don't need to defeat you. They only need to find the button. Once they find it, they own your reaction. They know what makes you explain. They know what makes you angry. They know what makes you chase. They know what makes you panic. They know what makes you prove yourself. And the moment somebody can predict your reaction, they can manage you. Nietzsche's self-overcoming isn't just about becoming stronger than other people. It's about becoming stronger than the version of you that keeps reacting like a trained animal. Somebody insults you, and old you needs to answer. Somebody pulls away, and old you needs to chase. Somebody doubts you, and old you needs to prove. Somebody disrespects you, and old you needs to explode. Somebody ignores you, and old you needs to perform. But the dangerous man starts removing the buttons, not by pretending he feels nothing, by refusing to be led by every feeling. This is where power multiplies. The energy you used to waste reacting goes back into building. Your attention comes back. Your focus comes back. Your voice gets slower. Your eyes get steadier. Your decisions get cleaner. Your presence gets heavier. People feel it when a man isn't easy to move. They might not know what changed, but they feel the difference. He doesn't rush to fill silence. He doesn't laugh at disrespect. He doesn't explain himself to people committed to misunderstanding him. He doesn't chase mixed signals. He doesn't reward emotional games. He doesn't enter every argument he's invited into. That man becomes powerful because he stops leaking. For the next 7 days, when something triggers you, don't respond immediately. Not because silence is always the answer, because delay gives you your power back. Wait, breathe. Ask, what reaction are they trying to pull out of me? Then choose. That one pause can save your identity. Because a man who can't be baited can't be easily controlled. But now we need to talk about the dangerous part, because if you follow everything up to this point, you'll become stronger. You'll become harder to control. You'll build teeth. You'll stop running from pain. You'll stop worshiping the crowd. You'll stop explaining yourself. You'll turn envy into direction. You'll stop reacting, and that can make you powerful, but it can also make you cold, arrogant, cruel, addicted to dominance. You might start looking down on people who are still weak. You might confuse self-respect with ego, and that's where a lot of men lose the plot. They discover dark psychology, Nietzsche, Machiavelli, status, frame, discipline, and power, and suddenly they become the exact type of man they used to hate. Loud, insecure, controlling, emotionally dead, always testing people, always trying to win, always trying to look unfazed. That's not becoming dangerous. That's becoming damaged with better vocabulary. This is why the final rule matters. This is the rule that separates intimidating from untouchable. Rule 7. Become dangerous, then put yourself under command. Nietzsche gives you the fire, but Marcus Aurelius gives you the governor. And without that governor, fire spreads everywhere. A dangerous man without command becomes a monster. A dangerous man under command becomes a force. That's the difference. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his greatest battle wasn't against enemies. It was against himself, his anger, his ego, his fear, his craving for comfort, his temptation to become corrupted by power. That's the missing piece. Nietzsche teaches you to overcome yourself. Marcus teaches you to rule yourself. And you need both, because power without self-command becomes chaos, but self-command without power becomes passivity. The goal isn't to become harmless. The goal is to become capable, strong, disciplined, focused, hard to manipulate, hard to bait, hard to shame, hard to control, and then choose restraint. That's the dangerous man. He can speak sharply, but he doesn't need to humiliate. He can walk away, but he doesn't need to punish with silence. He can see manipulation, but he doesn't become manipulative. He can feel anger, but anger doesn't drive the car. He can protect his peace, but he doesn't use peace as an excuse for cowardice. He can love people, but he doesn't abandon himself to keep them. That's untouchable. And this is the real psychological looks maxing. Not just how you look, but the mind behind what people feel when they're around you. Because a mastered mind changes the way you enter a room. Your posture changes because you're not begging to be accepted. Your voice changes because you're not rushing for approval. Your eyes change because you're not hiding from judgment. Your silence changes because it no longer comes from fear. Your presence changes because people can feel when a man has met himself and stopped running. That's why the version of you nobody would dare disrespect already exists. He's not some fake character you've got to invent. He's the man underneath the fear, underneath the people-pleasing, underneath the laziness, underneath the excuses, underneath the resentment, underneath the need to be understood, underneath the addiction to comfort, underneath the old identity that kept you safe and small. You don't become him by pretending to be dangerous. You become him by doing the work that makes pretending unnecessary. Build teeth, make peace with pain, create your code, accept being misunderstood, turn envy into coordinates, remove the buttons people use to control you, then put all that power under command. That's the final answer. The last rule was never just become dangerous. It was become dangerous enough to have power and disciplined enough not to be possessed by it. That separates the man who scares people from the man who commands himself. One is intimidating, the other is untouchable. So here's the challenge. Comment one word below. Dangerous. Not because you're trying to look hard, because today is the day you stop calling your weakness kindness. I've studied psychology for years, and this is what separates men who consistently improve themselves from men who stay stagnant and stuck. Drop a comment and let me know which tip hit the hardest. If this video opened your eyes, smash the like button. And if you're serious about investing in yourself and your future, become a channel member. This directly funds our high impact content and rewires your mindset instead of wasting your time with the basic advice everyone else gives you. Most creators give you surface level tips. We give you the actual system to improving yourself. Lastly, make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications. Most guys consume content but never commit to the journey. They're scared to take the steps necessary because they're not serious about bettering themselves. They're happy staying invisible, staying average, staying predictable. But you, I know you're different. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe and become a member today. And let's go beyond betterness.